Greetings, everyone. This is Live Life Well TV host Robert Landau with another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. This episode, we will talk about all things having to do with the great Ella Fitzgerald. Stay tuned. What can we say about Ella Fitzgerald? I mean, this could take 6 hours, but don't worry, it won't. It'll be rather short, direct, and to the point. And that's how Ella Fitzgerald was. She has been called the First Lady of Song for all the right reasons. She's been called Mama Jazz, and she has also been called Lady Ella. And most importantly, this remarkable woman has been called one of the most influential jazz vocalists of the entire 20th century, a title more than well-deserved. She had a recording career that spanned no less than, get this, 57 years. She won 13 Grammy Awards. She was awarded the National Medal of Art by President Ronald Reagan. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President George Bush. In fact, Ella has won so many awards that we could just do an episode on the awards that the great Ella Fitzgerald has won. It's interesting, but it is my guess that we all know something about Ella Fitzgerald, the legendary singer. But do we know Ella the person? And do we know exactly how Ella Jane Fitzgerald became the Ella Fitzgerald that we will always know and love? Let's get the answers to these questions and more. To start out, as I usually like to do, let's not only hear what this incredible lady had to say, but what other people had to say about her. First off, a dear, dear friend of hers, Mr. Frank Sinatra, on his dear friend Ella Fitzgerald, once said, "The best way to start any musical evening is with this girl. It don't get better than that." Johnny Mathis once said, "She was the best. She was the best there ever was. Amongst all of us who sing, she was the best." A gentleman by the name of Jimmy Rolls once said, "Music comes out of her. When she walks down the street, she leaves notes." Richard Rodgers, the great Richard Rodgers of Rodgers and Hammerstein, once said, "Whatever she does to my songs, she always, always makes them sound better." Arthur Fiedler of Boston Pops fame once said this, "Ella's voice becomes the orchestra's richest and most versatile sound." And now, words from Ella herself. She once said, "I stole everything I've ever heard, but mostly I stole from the horns." She also said, "I sing like I feel." Ella also said, "It isn't where you've come from, it's where you're going that counts." The place? Newport News, Virginia. The day and date, April 25th, 1917, are Ella Jane Fitzgerald's date and place of birth. Her parents separated shortly after she was born, and Ella was moved with her mom to Yonkers, New York. At first, it might surprise you to know that Ella had her heart set on being, of all things, a dancer, not a singer. That dream immediately turned to dust when Ella would hear recordings of Louis Armstrong, Bing Crosby, and the one and only Boswell sisters. Not many people have heard of the Boswell sisters, but they were before the Andrews sisters. And the Andrews sisters modeled their whole act and way of singing and being after their mentors, the Boswell sisters. 1932 would bring a sudden shock Ella's way, something that would take her years and possibly the rest of her life to recover from. Her mother, Temperance Fitzgerald, died in a car accident. She was here one day and gone the next. Shattered, as you can well imagine, and heartbroken, Ella moved in with her aunt and Ella's half-sister. It should come as no surprise when I say that Ella's grades started to take a sudden downward turn, and she would soon start missing many of her classes altogether. Such was her emotional reaction to the sudden loss of her dear mother. But actually, I hate to say it, but things would get worse, much worse, before they would start to get better. Ella would desperately need money at this point, and to that end, she would have some of the most unusual jobs I've ever heard of, so see if you don't agree. She was a lookout at a bordello. At another point in time, she worked with a mafia-affiliated numbers runner. Fitzgerald's situation would even get worse after all that. At one point, she actually had to be taken into custody by the police. She would wind up in reform school. But would she stay in reform school? Nope, she would escape. And unfortunately, things would get even worse. Ella was even homeless for a period of time. Does the name Ella Fitzgerald and homelessness actually kind of seem to go together? Well, not for me. I don't know about you. When you don't really know who you really are and what you are totally capable of, strange things can happen. But not for long. Things would change for her, and change for the better rather quickly. That date was November 21st, 1934. The place was Harlem's legendary Apollo Theater. The vehicle, the Apollo's famous amateur night, something that I think you can still see on television quite often to this very day. If not, it was on the air not too long ago. And if you've ever seen it, it was pretty grueling. I mean, yes, it would be filmed at the Apollo Theater, and it was a talent show. And there would usually be a star name as its host, but the audience gathered that night would be the judge of whether you had talent or you didn't. And God forbid you didn't have talent, because they would start screaming, the audience, to get you off stage, maybe a minute or two or halfway into your song, dance number, or playing the trumpet, whatever it was. Ella thought that she would try her hand in the arts. And if things worked out, well, then that would be just great. But mind you, as I referenced before, talent shows that the Apollo can often turn into a very fierce and negative thing if you don't happen to have talent. Or, let's put it this way, if the audience that night thinks and feels that you don't have talent, even if you think you do. So, here's what happened. Ella felt that she was brave enough to take the chance, and the plan was for her to dance. But when there are already rather accomplished dance acts on the bill that particular night, Ella decided at the last minute, at the very last minute, to sing instead. Was this someone who had been studying voice for years and was now ready to make her big break into show business? No. Ella was understandably absolutely terrified, but she persevered. Sometimes when you have a very rough and challenging childhood, you develop some really good armor, which makes getting to where you want to be a little easier. So, remember when I said that Ella had listened to the Boswell sisters' recordings when she was younger? Ella absolutely idolized the lead singer from the Boswell group, and her name was Connie Boswell. Ella copied exactly how Connie Boswell sounded when she would sing, and off onto the stage she went, knowing full well that this evening at the Apollo would make or break her. It didn't break her. It made her. The crowd absolutely went wild, and the judges of the talent show that night gave Ella the first grand prize and all the money that was associated with it. How much money was associated with the grand prize that night, you might be sitting there wondering. There just happened to be a grand total of $25 that made up the grand prize that night. And never mind the low sum, Ella knew that she was well on her way and that it wouldn't be much longer now. And you know what? It wasn't. In less than a year after that memorable night at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, Ella would be singing with the Tiny Bradshaw Band at another venue in Harlem that was really popular as well during the day, but unfortunately no longer exists, the Harlem Opera House. It was there that Ella met a famous band leader at the time named Chick Webb. It was Webb that could elevate Ella to the next level of her career. But the question was, would he do that? The New York Times once wrote these words: Webb was reluctant to sign her because she was gawky and unkempt, a diamond in the rough. You know, tough words to be published in such a major newspaper about yourself. But maybe the Times actually had a point. Throughout her career, Ella never was the sexy, svelte-looking kitten that so many other big band singers at the time were. She knew that this could actually work against her. She was always, to that end, aware of her weight. She subjected herself to the issue of looks versus talent that still goes on in show business to this very day. Is it your talent or your look that make you a star? Interesting question that we could go on about for hours. Later in her career, Ella was quoted as saying these words: I know I'm no glamour girl, and it's not easy for me to get up in front of a crowd of people. It used to bother me a lot, but now I've got it figured out that God gave me this talent to use, so I just stand there and sing. Chick Webb wisely decided to give Ella a try during a concert the band was doing at Yale University. She was an unqualified, sensational hit. Now Ella would be the lead singer with Chick Webb and his band on the road for a grand sum of, get this, $12.50 a week. She would end up making her first recording. The song was called Love and Kisses with the band, and there were two more numbers that she would record. One became the stuff of legend, the other did not. The one that didn't was called If You Can Sing It, You'll Have to Swing It, but the one that did was called A Tisket, a Tasket. What many people might not realize is that Ella co-wrote that song. What many people might also not realize is that when Chick Webb passed in 1939, his band was renamed Ella Fitzgerald and her famous orchestra. That is cool. Ella was not only the featured vocalist, but now she was also the band leader up on that podium. She also ended up recording no less than 150 sides with her orchestra. In 1942, she left her band and embarked on a true solo career. Now, Ella had a manager, and it seemed as if things were really starting to take off, but times had changed. Big band was out, and bebop was in. Would Ella adapt her style of singing to bebop? Well, you bet she did. As a matter of fact, bebop turned out to be a major coup for Ella. She could adapt her voice perfectly for that style of singing. She would say, "I just tried to do with my voice what I heard the horns in the band doing." What type of singing would this be referred to as? You might already know. Scat singing. And Ella was the only one who could really do this well, besides incredible folk like Louis Armstrong. "Oh Lady Be Good," "How High the Moon," and "Flying Home" would all show off Ella's voice in absolutely perfect style. This was now 1947. In 1950, Ella would release an album called Ella Sings Gershwin. Ella's manager felt it was high time to create a record label just for her, since her contract with Decca Records was about to expire. So the Verve label, the famous Verve label, was created, and Ella was on it. Feeling that singing bebop was starting to run its course, Ella would release a series of recordings that would define her amazing career. Maybe you might have owned some of those recordings. It was a series of recordings. Ella would be singing some of the Great American Songbook on those recordings. Just incredible. And obviously all of these are still available today in various shapes or forms. So here was a quote that was attributed to Ella back in those days. And it went like this: "Here was a black woman popularizing urban songs often written by immigrant Jews to a national audience of predominantly white Christians." Wow. Ella didn't only spend this time in that day recording these albums, she would also tour. She loved to tour, and to that end, get this, she would tour 40 to 45 weeks per year, not only in the States, but really the world over. When Verve Records was sold to MGM in 1963, Ella's contract, unfortunately, was not renewed. She was free to do whatever she wanted, and you wouldn't believe what she ended up doing. Sure, she continued recording, but now she would record an album of Christian hymns as well as a country and western album. Another label was created just for her, and she would go on to record no less than 30 albums for that label. Ella would release her last record in 1989 and would stop performing altogether in 1993. In total, get this, the great Ella Fitzgerald would make over 200 top-selling albums. She also won more Grammy Awards for those recordings than any other female vocalist in history. Personally, Ella had a rather stormy private life. Think of it. Would you be able to concentrate on a serious relationship if you were literally on tour nonstop between the years of 1935 all the way to 1993? I don't know about you, but I don't think it would work for me. Ella would marry twice. Her first marriage was to a convicted drug dealer and alleged hustler. The marriage was annulled after only 2 years. Ella would marry a second time to a bass player, only to have that one end in divorce. Whether Ella liked it or not, I feel that she would say that she was really married to her career. And that was just fine. That was the only relationship that actually truly worked for her. What about alleged affairs, you might be wondering? Well, allegedly, Ella had some. One was with, allegedly, a Norwegian guy by the name of Thor Einar Larsen. The affair allegedly ended abruptly when Larsen was sentenced to 5 months hard labor in Sweden for stealing money from a gal that he was previously engaged to. If I were Ella, I would have been totally relieved that things didn't work out for her and him. Ella was also known as being very shy and rather withdrawn. When she was on the road, she would prefer not to hang out with everyone else that was on the road with her. Ella basically just kept to herself. She wasn't aloof or snooty. It just seemed that she preferred to be alone. And you know what? I don't blame her, because that is a grueling schedule that demands a lot of energy, and traveling from place to place, hotel room to hotel room, train, plane, bus, whatever it might have been, depending on the tour for all of those years. Wow. You kind of need to be alone to rejuvenate and rebalance yourself a lot during each tour. Ella was one of the few singers that let her songs that she would sing speak for themselves. Nothing more, but nothing less. Ella and her managers also wouldn't stand for, thank God, discrimination, something that unfortunately other African American singers had to deal with on a daily basis in those times. Lena Horne, for one of them, Billie Holiday, for another. The Mocambo Club was world famous back in the day, but hadn't really booked any African American singers on its extensive roster. And you won't believe who would go to bat for Ella in that regard. It was none other than Marilyn Monroe. Monroe happened to be an enormous fan of Ella's, and here is exactly what happened in Ella's words. She once said, "I owe Marilyn Monroe an enormous debt. It was because of her that I played the Mocambo, a very popular nightclub in the 1950s. She personally called the owner of the Mocambo and told him she wanted me booked immediately, and if he would do it, she would take a front table each and every night during my run there. She told him, and it was true, due to Marilyn's superstar status, that the press would go wild. The owner said yes, and Marilyn was there, front table, each and every night, and the press went wild. After that," she said, "I never had to play a small jazz club again." She, meaning Marilyn Monroe, was an unusual woman, a little ahead of her time, and she didn't even know it. Few people might also realize that Ella really wanted to act in films. But she got her wish in 1955 when she played a singer in a film called Pete Kelly's Blues. The film also starred Janet Leigh and another Leigh, Peggy Lee. The film bombed, but the New York Times did say this: "About 5 minutes out of 95 suggests the picture this might have been. Take the ingenious prologue, or take the fleeting scenes when the wonderful Ella Fitzgerald, allotted a few spoken lines, fills the screen and soundtrack with her strong and mobile features and voice." As you might remember, Ella also appeared on TV numerous times. She also appeared in numerous commercials. I don't know about you, but I can still see her doing that unforgettable Memorex commercial for the cassette tape company. Is it live or is it Memorex? That was her. Ella also had numerous health issues later in life, and some of them unfortunately were serious, and one would unfortunately be fatal. She was all but blind due to the effects of diabetes, and to make matters worse, she had to have, get this, both of her legs amputated in 1993, the same year that she stopped appearing on stage. The world lost a very special soul and major talent due to diabetes back in 1996. The great Ella Fitzgerald was 79 years young when she passed. What an amazing lady with a more than amazing voice, and the world will never ever forget her. One of her fellow musicians said of the legacy that Ella left us when he said, Fitzgerald simply exists in tune, and she hits every note that there is without the slightest trace of effort. Other singers tend to sound like they're trying to reach up to a note. Fitzgerald always sounds like she's already there, and she owns it. If anything, she's descending from her heavenly perch and swooping down to deliver whatever pitch she wants. In closing, I would like to say that the great Ella Fitzgerald once said, I guess what everyone wants more than anything else is to be loved, and to know that you loved me for my singing is too much for me. Forgive me if I don't happen to have all the words. Maybe I can sing it and you'll understand. And I think we do. Thank God for Ella Fitzgerald. Thank God for her wonderful voice, but thank God for Ella always being Ella. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Robert Landau, Live Life Well TV host, with another episode of America's Greatest Personalities. We'll see you either on previous episodes of this show or future episodes of this show.